The dim glow of the setting sun seeped through the cracked window, casting long, jagged shadows over the cluttered chaos of my studio. Canvases stacked haphazardly against peeling brick walls, scattered brushes coated with dried pigment, and the faint smell of burnt tobacco lingering in the stale air. I sat on the edge of my battered leather chair, rubbing my trembling hands over my face, trying to wash away the remnants of a nightmare I had relived too many times. The silence was thick, almost suffocating, interrupted only by the distant hum of the city outside and the sharp, echoing remembrance of betrayal. Victor's face haunted me. The charming smile that had once promised partnership, now twisted into a mask of deceit. I could almost hear his voice mocking, "You're too naive, Elias. You don't see the truth behind the mask." It was that very betrayal that shattered what fragile trust I had left. I remembered the day vividly. The shared project that seemed so promising. The stolen ideas. The whispered lies that turned friendship into treachery. I clenched my fists as a surge of anger welled up. Hot and unforgiving, I remembered confronting him in that abandoned warehouse. Shadows flickering across broken windows. His eyes, once full of brotherhood, now cold and calculating, had flickered with guilt I refused to accept. When he handed me a pack of cigarettes, a seemingly innocent act, I saw it for what it was. A taunt. A symbol of everything I had lost. I looked at him, trembling with rage, voice barely above a whisper. "You think this little token can buy forgiveness? You think a pack of cigarettes can erase what you did?" His smirk faltered, and he opened his mouth to speak. But no words came. Instead, I saw the flicker of a regret he desperately tried to hide. I had almost convinced myself I could walk away, let the past stay buried, but that moment, the smell of burnt paper, the feel of cold metal pressed against my skin, the look in his eyes, ignited something darker inside me. The years of bottled rage, of helplessness and betrayal threatened to burst free. I realized then that I had only two choices: continue drowning in the shadows of his deception, or confront him head-on, forcing him to confront the ghost of his treachery. My hand trembled as I reached into my coat pocket, fingers closing around the cold weight of the small, sharp knife I kept for moments just like this. Victor's words echoed in my mind. "You're just a broken artist." But I knew I was more than that. I was a man scorned, pushed beyond the brink of mercy. The gallery of my suffering was painted in every scar across my soul, each betrayal adding a new layer of darkness. As I stared at the worn, cracked surface of my latest canvas, a portrait of pain and redemption, I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me with relentless force. The night was falling fast, and I knew that whatever happened next would define me, carving a new scar in my life story. I swallowed hard, the taste of blood sharp on my tongue, as I prepared to face Victor again. This time not with words, but with the raw, unyielding truth of my fury. The memory hit me like a wrecking ball, crashing through the fragile walls I had painstakingly built around my soul. Victor and I had been inseparable in those days. Partners in art, conspirators in dreams woven from paint and possibility. I could still see us in that dingy studio, brushes in hand, laughter echoing off peeling brick walls as we sketched visions of fame and freedom. Victor's voice, light and confident, would often cut through the hum of city noise. "We're destined for more than these shadows. Elias. Just wait. We'll make the world see what we see." His eyes sparkled with a mischievous warmth that made me believe in something greater, something worth fighting for. We poured our hearts into every canvas, sharing late nights fueled by cheap coffee and reckless hope, trusting each other implicitly. Then the betrayal sliced through like a razor. One cold night I returned to the studio, eager to unveil a new piece, only to find my most precious work stolen, replaced with counterfeit copies. Victor's signature scrawled across the back of one of my paintings, a mocking reminder that he'd taken everything: the trust, the friendship, my future. "You're just a broken artist," he sneered during that confrontation, his smirk slipping into something darker, more calculating. I remember my hands trembling as I faced him, the bitterness rising in my throat, choking me. "You lied," I whispered, voice hoarse and trembling. "You stole from me, betrayed everything we built." His eyes flickered with guilt, but he quickly masked it behind a veneer of charm. "Relax, Elias," he said, voice silky but cold. "It's just business. You're too emotional. Always too damn emotional. Your art was good, but it was nothing without me guiding you." That night, as I watched him walk away, reaping the rewards of my work, I felt the foundation of trust crumble beneath my feet, leaving me adrift in a storm of doubt and rage. The world I once believed in, the friendship I clung to, dissolved into shadows, leaving only the bitter taste of betrayal and the silent vow to never let him or anyone else manipulate me again. Every canvas I now painted carried the ghost of that pain, a testament to how deeply a single act of treachery had shattered the fragile illusion of companionship, turning my hope into distrust and my dreams into scars. The moment I stepped back into my dimly lit studio, the air thick with the scent of oil paint and dust, a small, unassuming envelope lay on the cluttered work table, as if waiting for me. Its rough edges were uneven, the paper slightly crumpled, and there was no sender name, only a faint smudged fingerprint pressed into the corner. A whisper of someone's hesitation. I hesitated, heart pounding, fingers trembling as I unfolded the greasy flap. Inside, a single slip of paper stared back at me, scribbled in hurried, jagged handwriting. "Victor is alive. The moment of truth approaches. At the crossroad of pain and forgiveness." My breath caught, and I instinctively looked around my studio, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. My eyes darted over the canvases, each stroke echoing betrayal, pain, and longing for redemption. The phrase echoed in my mind, haunting yet oddly comforting. Was this some cruel game? A trap? Or a chance to finally face the ghosts that had haunted me? I clenched my fists and muttered aloud, voice hoarse but resolute. "Where? Tell me where he's hiding." The silence pressed in like a suffocating fog, broken only by the faint scrape of my nails against the worn wood of the table. Then a soft, almost inaudible whisper seemed to drift through the room, a voice barely human, yet undeniably deliberate. "The crossroad is where the truth will be spoken. Be ready. The time has come, Elias." My pulse thundered in my ears as I looked out the grimy window into the city's shadows, knowing that this message was no coincidence. Somehow, in that cryptic phrase, I sensed the promise of confrontation, of justice long overdue, but also of the dangerous precipice I was about to step over. Every nerve in my body tingled with anticipation and dread. The moment of reckoning was imminent, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down, urging me forward into the darkness where pain and forgiveness awaited like twin specters. I took a shaky breath, clutching the paper tight, and whispered to no one, "If this is my final act, I'll make sure it's one they'll never forget." My eyes flicked to the blood-stained fragment of Victor's clothing, clenched tightly in my trembling hand, and an icy shiver ran down my spine. The torn fabric, soaked in crimson, seemed to pulse with the memories of our shared past. Every betrayal, every whispered lie that had sliced through my trust like a jagged blade. It was a fragment of Victor's life, a dirty badge of the treachery he'd woven into my own, and I clutched it like a talisman of vengeance. I saw him in my mind's eye, his smug grin, the flicker of guilt hiding behind his charm, the scars etched into his skin like silent confessions of past sins. That blood-stained cloth was more than a piece of fabric. It was a symbol of everything he'd stolen from me, of the trust I'd sacrificed in the depths of my soul. I remembered how he'd looked when I first handed him the pack of cigarettes. An act simple, yet loaded with unspoken history. An invitation to reconcile or burn bridges beyond repair. Now that gesture felt like an ironic dagger, a cruel reminder of the friendship we once shared, shattered in betrayal. I clenched my fists as my jaw tightened, the ache of suppressed fury boiling beneath my skin. "You thought you could hide," I whispered, voice thick with venom, voice breaking as I fought to steady myself. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at the bloodstain, feeling the weight of every broken promise, every moment I had trusted him. The blood on that fabric wasn't just a stain. It was a curse, a warning, a calling. It ignited a fire inside me, an obsession that refused to be smothered. I knew, deep down, that this was the moment I had been waiting for, the point of no return, where I would confront Victor face to face, not just with words, but with the raw, brutal truth of my pain. My fingers trembled as I pressed the fragment against my palm, feeling its rough edges bite into my skin, anchoring me to the past I could no longer ignore. "You'll beg for forgiveness," I muttered, voice hoarse and fractured, "but it'll be with a scar that no apology can heal." The room grew colder as I felt the storm inside me swell, an unstoppable force demanding justice, revenge, redemption. Whatever it took to finally close the chapter of betrayal that had haunted me for so long. And as I stood there, clutching that torn, bloodied fragment, I knew that I was no longer the same man. I was a storm unleashed, ready to carve my truth into the world with every fiber of my fractured soul. The alleyway was cloaked in shadows, a narrow slit of moonlight barely illuminating the uneven brick walls and strewn debris, the scent of damp concrete mingling with the faint hint of burnt cigarettes. I moved cautiously, my footsteps muffled by a thin layer of garbage, every sense heightened, ears straining for the faintest sound. Then, from the darkness emerged a figure, gaunt, hunched, cloaked in a tattered hoodie that obscured his face, but his eyes caught the faint glint of recognition. Without a word, he stepped closer, voice low and gravelly. "You're looking for him, aren't you?" His mouth twitched into a crooked smile as he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket, pressing it into my palm. "Victor's hiding in that old warehouse on the edge of the docks. You'll find him there, but be careful. He's not the same man you once knew. He's broken, scarred, and just as dangerous as ever. Trust me. I've seen the darkness in him firsthand." His gaze flickered with a mixture of pity and warning. "He's waiting for you, Elias. And trust me, this isn't just about vengeance anymore. It's about finally piercing through the lies and facing what's been buried deep inside. You want closure, don't you? Well, then don't hesitate. Go to him. Face your demons. Let the shadows swallow the truth. Whatever it takes to make him beg for forgiveness with a voice that's torn from his throat." The man's words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding and purpose, as I clenched the paper tightly, feeling the rough edges bite into my palm, grounding me in this dark, unforgiving moment. The city's hush was broken only by my steady breath, the taste of impending confrontation thick on my tongue. I knew this was more than a search for truth. It was a descent into the depths of my own fury, and I was ready to unleash it. Every step forward felt like walking into a storm. But I didn't falter. This was my reckoning. The night draped itself heavy over the abandoned warehouse, an unyielding shroud of shadows, swallowing the fractured remnants of what once might have been something more promising. Elias pressed himself flat behind a pile of broken crates, the rough wood scraping against his palms as he steadied his trembling breath. Through a jagged crack in the plywood, he watched Victor, oblivious to the silent storm lurking just out of sight. Victor sat slouched against a rusted metal barrel, the faint glow from a flickering bulb casting harsh shadows across his scarred face. A cigarette dangled loosely from his fingers, the tip glowing softly as he inhaled with a slow, deliberate pull. The smoke curled lazily into the damp air, mingling with the scent of damp concrete, rust, and something darker. Remnants of past betrayal still lingering in the night. Victor's eyes fluttered closed for a moment as he exhaled, the smoke swirling like a ghost of their fractured history. A fragile bridge between friendship and enmity now reduced to ash. You know? He murmured to no one, voice gravelly, thick with fatigue. I never thought it had come to this. His words felt like a thin veneer of normalcy over the chaos beneath. Elias's jaw tightened as he clenched his fists, feeling the familiar surge of rage both tender and sharp, like a blade just waiting to be drawn. Every inhale Victor took seemed to echo the silent promise of what was to come, a ritual of surrender disguised as a moment of peace. Elias pressed closer, the faint scrape of his shoe on concrete nearly deafening in the quiet. His eyes flicked to the cigarette, symbol of their lost camaraderie, now a cruel prop in this game of shadows. As Victor exhaled, a thin stream of smoke escaped his lips, curling upward before vanishing into the darkness. Elias's mind raced. This was the line he had crossed in his thoughts, the threshold where revenge morphed into something far more visceral. Every muscle in his body tensed, a quiet determination settling over him like armor. He knew that in moments like these, appearances betrayed nothing. Victor's calm was a mask, a fragile shield hiding the guilt and fear he refused to face. Elias's fingers brushed the cold steel of a small knife hidden beneath his coat, a reminder of how far he'd come from the naive hope of justice to this brutal reckoning. Slowly he drew a deep breath, steadying himself as the scene played out in silent cinema before his eyes. A man lost in smoke and shadows, oblivious to the storm inches away, waiting for the perfect moment to shatter the illusions of peace and force, the truth into the light. Elias's heart hammered in his chest, each beat a reminder that this night would change everything, that the fragile line between forgiveness and vengeance was about to be crossed, and when the time was right, he would step out from the darkness, not with words or pleas, but with a presence so raw, so uncompromising, that Victor's trembling voice would finally beg for mercy, though what would come out of his torn throat might be the last thing Elias ever truly needed to. Here! Victor's trembling hand emerged from the shadows, clutching a crumpled pack of cigarettes, with a hesitant tremor that betrayed his attempt at a gesture of peace. His eyes flickered with a flickering remnants of the old camaraderie they once shared, an unspoken invitation to bridge the chasm of betrayal that now separated them. He offered it out slowly, fingers trembling, as if hesitant to let go of the fragile pretense of friendship that had long since decayed into bitterness. Here, Victor muttered, voice cracking just enough to hint at remorse. For old time's sake. His gaze searched Elias's face, eager for a crack in the armor of suspicion that Elias had built around himself. The pack was passed with a tentative shake, the cardboard crackling softly in the tense silence that hung heavy between them. Elias's eyes flicked down momentarily, catching the shimmer of smoke curling from Victor's trembling fingers, an unconscious mirror of his own inner storm, the memories of trust, laughter, and betrayal swirling into a dark whirlpool. Elias's jaw tensed, nostrils flaring as he studied Victor's gaunt, scarred face, his features once smooth with charm, now marred by guilt and secrets. He reached out, almost lazily, but his fingers hovered just above the offer, a silent warning that he was no fool to such manipulations. No, Elias finally said, voice low and steady, eyes narrowing with cold suspicion. You can keep your peace, Victor. I know what this is. Just another trick, another ploy to keep me quiet, or lull me into a false sense of forgiveness. You think I don't see through it? That I don't remember how you sold me out? How you used me, then threw me aside like yesterday's trash? His voice sharpened, the words dripping with the acid of betrayal, each syllable a razor's edge. Victor's hand faltered, the pack trembling in his grip, and his face flushed with shame and desperation. Come on, Elias, just take it. A sign that... A sign of what? Elias interrupted, voice thick with contempt. That you're sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it anymore, Victor. The cigarettes won't wash away what you did, and I refuse to be dragged into another game of illusion. You expect me to believe your false gestures while your eyes betray your guilt? No, I see right through you. That pack of cigarettes is just another mask, a cheap attempt to buy your way back into my good graces. Well, I'm not buying it. He stepped forward, eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and resolve, voice dropping to a deadly whisper. So keep your peace, keep your lies, and keep that pack. I don't need your hollow apologies. What I want is the truth, raw and ugly, and I'll take it on my own terms. His hand brushed the cold steel of a hidden knife beneath his coat, a silent warning that his patience had worn thin, that tonight the fragile veneer of peace Victor clung to was about to shatter entirely. Victor's face twisted in a mixture of shame and defiance, but Elias's gaze remained unflinching, cold, calculating, and ready to turn this charade into something far worse. Because in that moment, beneath the flickering shadows and the oppressive weight of betrayal, Elias Mercer had already crossed the line from reconciliation to retribution, and Victor's tentative peace offering would only mark the beginning of his ultimate downfall. Under the dim glow of a flickering overhead light, I watched Victor's eyes dart nervously as I slowly closed the distance between us, every step deliberate and measured. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, sweat pooling at his temples, betraying his bravado now stripped away by the weight of what I'd planned. "You think I came here to discuss apologies?" I whispered, voice cold and razor-sharp. "No. I came to make sure you understand what betrayal truly costs." My hand reached into my coat, fingers curling around a small, sharp blade I had hidden, the steel gleaming wickedly in the shadows. Victor's face paled, mouth trembling, as he realized the trap I'd set, one he'd unknowingly stepped into. "Remember this moment," I continued, voice low and gritty, "because it's the last time you'll ever have power over me." I forced him down onto a battered wooden chair, bindings already tight around his wrists. His eyes pleaded, but I ignored the desperation, instead pulling out a battered pack of cigarettes from my pocket. "Here," I said, holding it out between us. "Take this, and maybe you'll remember the days when trust wasn't just a word you threw around to cover your lies." He hesitated, trembling fingers reaching for the pack, the scent of stale tobacco hanging heavy in the air. As he grasped the cigarettes, I pulled a lighter from my pocket, igniting the tip with a flick that sent a small flare of orange light into the dark room. "Now," I said softly, voice almost a whisper, "you're going to beg for forgiveness." Victor's eyes widened with confusion, until I pressed the hot tip of the cigarette against his palm, burning the skin just enough to sting, forcing him to cry out in pain. "Beg!" I commanded, voice rising just enough to echo through the silence. His voice cracked, strained as he rasped, "Please, man. I'm sorry, I cut him off with a cruel smirk. "No, Victor. Not yet." I held the cigarette steady, watching his trembling hands and tear-streaked face. "I want to hear you scream it. I want to hear you beg with your throat torn apart, just like the trust you shattered. Say it. Say you're sorry for everything you've done." His voice faltered, then broke, a guttural cry torn from his damaged throat as I pressed harder, the burn searing both flesh and dignity. His shouts echoed in the hollow room, a raw, ugly sound that filled me with a sick mixture of satisfaction and revulsion. That moment, when his tears and screams merged, became the culmination of my silent, seething vengeance. I watched him collapse, trembling and defeated, the cigarettes now ash in his trembling hand, and felt the cruel relief wash over me, because in forcing him to beg, in tearing away his false control, I had finally turned the tables. And as he gasped for breath, I knew that this act, painful, visceral, had forever etched itself into the dark corners of my soul, a symbol of the price of betrayal and the depths I was willing to go to reclaim my broken dignity. The alley was a shadowed corridor of peeling graffiti and broken brick, a relic of forgotten times that once echoed with laughter and reckless youth, but now only whispered secrets to the cold night. I chose this place deliberately, the faded murals and spray-painted symbols a haunting reminder of our past, the reckless camaraderie that Victor once shared with me before the betrayal. As I stepped into the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, I saw him waiting just beyond the reach of the faint light, leaning against the graffitied wall with his arms crossed, eyes wary but hiding a flicker of false confidence. My heart hammered in my chest, not from fear but from the gnawing anticipation of what was about to unfold. I paused, letting the silence stretch between us, thick with unspoken histories. As I took a slow breath and finally spoke, in a voice edged with steel. "You remember this place, don't you? You used to talk about how it was your sanctuary, your escape. But now it's just a cage, Victor." He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting around the alley, trying to mask his unease. "What do you want?" he finally rasped, voice cracking, betraying the bravado he desperately clung to. I took a step forward, every movement deliberate, the echo of my boots against the uneven pavement loud in the stillness. "I want you to acknowledge what you did, Victor. Not just with words, but with your soul. You stole from me, betrayed me, and left me drowning in lies while you walked away like a king. You think I've forgotten? That I've forgiven? No, I've carried this burden, this wound, and tonight I'm here to make sure you understand. You're going to look me in the eye and tell me you're sorry for everything." His jaw clenched, sweat beads forming on his brow despite the cold, as he looked down briefly, then back up, trying to summon the mask of control. I clenched my fists, feeling the rough texture of the spray paint beneath my fingertips, a symbol of defaced innocence. "Speak!" I demanded, voice low but commanding as I closed the distance in a few strides, my gaze unflinching. For a moment he hesitated. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, strained with guilt and fear, he muttered, "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I was blinded by greed. I was wrong. Please, just—" But I cut him off sharply. "No, sorry isn't enough anymore. You're going to understand what your betrayal cost me, what it tore apart inside. And when I say enough, I mean enough of the lies, enough of the silence, enough of pretending that you're still the man I once trusted." I reached into my coat pocket, pulling out a crumpled pack of cigarettes, the same brand we once shared, holding it out to him with a cold glare. "This is your last chance. Take it, and tell me the truth I deserve. Or don't. Either way, I'm done listening to your lies." His hand trembled as he reached out, fingers grazing the pack, eyes fixed on mine with a mixture of dread and defiance. The alley's darkness seemed to close in, the graffiti around us almost alive, as we stood on the precipice of something irreparable. With a shaky inhale, he finally grasped the cigarettes, the weight of his guilt finally sinking in. And as he looked up at me with trembling lips, I knew I had staged this confrontation perfectly, bringing him back to the place where it all began, not just to face his betrayal, but to force him to confront his own shattered soul. This was the moment everything changed. An act of reckoning, sealed by the ghostly echoes of our past, ready to carve a new, darker chapter into the story we could never undo. Elias watched Victor's trembling hand reach for the crumpled pack of cigarettes, the flickering neon light casting jagged shadows across their faces. The alley had become a narrow, suffocating space where past and present collided. A place soaked in the scent of damp concrete, cigarette smoke, and something darker that clung to the air like a curse. Victor's eyes darted nervously as he hesitated before finally grasping the pack, his fingers trembling in the silence. "You really want me to take this?" he rasped, voice wavering. But Elias only nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. "Yeah," Elias said softly but with undeniable finality. "And this is your last shot. You hand me that pack and we talk. Or you keep quiet and I let you walk away. Broken, just like I should have done years ago." Victor swallowed hard, then snatched the cigarettes from Elias's outstretched hand, clutching it like a talisman of their fractured bond. His voice cracked as he managed, "I'm sorry, Elias. I never meant for it to come to this. I was weak, But Elias cut him off, voice cold and sharp. "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore. Not after what you did. Not after you tore apart everything we built. Betrayed me when I trusted you most." The faint glow from a nearby flickering street lamp illuminated Elias's face. Pale, intense, a mask of controlled rage barely held in check. He stepped closer, the gravel crunching beneath his boots, voice lowering into a whisper that carried a deadly promise. "You're going to beg for forgiveness. Beg with everything you've got, until you can't voice another lie. I want to hear your throat tear open, raw with regret, because that's what your betrayal cost me. More than just money. More than a broken friendship. It cost me my trust, my peace, my sense of self. And I'm done pretending I can forgive you. So tell me, Victor, what's it going to be? Will you kneel and plead, or walk away with your tail between your legs, knowing I've already taken what I needed from you?" Victor's eyes widened, sweat bead trailing down his temple as he struggled to breathe. Elias reached out, his hand firm but steady, pressing the pack into Victor's palm. "You want to talk? Then start talking," Elias said, voice barely above a whisper, yet laced with a dangerous edge. "Because once I make you beg, there's no going back. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only way you'll understand the depth of what you've destroyed." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken pain, and the promise of a confrontation that would leave scars, not only on their bodies but etched deep into their souls. Elias's eyes glinted with something primal, an unrelenting hunger to see Victor broken, to witness him fall to his knees, gasping for mercy that would never come. And as Victor finally raised the pack of cigarettes, hesitating before slowly opening it with trembling fingers, Elias knew. This was more than a confrontation. It was a reckoning, where the symbols of their past friendship, the cigarettes, became the instruments of a brutal truth that sometimes the only way to heal is through the raw, bleeding truth of pain. Elias's grip tightened like iron around Victor's trembling shoulders as he forcibly pushed him down to his knees on the cracked concrete floor. The dim, flickering light from a nearby broken fixture cast elongated shadows over their faces, emphasizing the stark contrast between Elias's cold, unwavering stare and Victor's wide, pleading eyes. Victor's hands flailed desperately, trying to manipulate the situation, his voice cracking as he gasped. "Come on, Elias. You don't have to do this. Listen, I can explain." But Elias cut him off with a sharp glare, his voice low and venomous. "Save your breath," he hissed, voice trembling with suppressed fury. "You've spun your web of lies long enough. Now it's your turn to kneel and listen." Victor's lips curled into a pathetic, wolfish grin as he struggled against Elias's relentless hold, attempting to twist free, to charm his way out of the nightmare he'd created. "You don't have to go this far," Victor whispered, shaky but slick with false charm, eyes darting around, searching for a way out. Elias's jaw clenched, his knuckles white as he tightened his grip, a primal fire burning behind his eyes. "Oh, I think I do," Elias hissed fiercely, voice thick with resolve. "You forced me to build this moment. This is where your lies evaporate. I want you to look at me, face the truth. You betrayed me when I trusted you most. And now, I'm about to make sure you understand what real pain feels like." Without warning, Elias shoved Victor's head down, forcing his face into the cold, gritty floor. Victor sputtered, trying to resist, but Elias's strength was unyielding, rooted in years of suppressed rage. His voice softened, yet cut sharply through the tense air. "Kneel," he commanded, "and beg for forgiveness, because that's the only thing that might save you from what's coming." Victor's hands desperately clawed at the concrete, but Elias pressed him further, forcing the back of his neck until his chin was pressed firmly against the rough surface. "You want to manipulate your way out? Not this time," Elias murmured, voice trembling with a mixture of anger and something darker, something that bordered on the edge of losing control. The silence stretched thick again, punctuated only by Victor's strained breathing and the faint scrape of Elias's fingers clenched in fists. Elias's eyes flickered with something feral, an unrelenting hunger to see Victor broken, to witness him fall to his knees in genuine remorse, battered and humiliated. As Victor struggled vainly, Elias leaned in close, his voice a cold promise. "Look at me, Victor. This is your moment of truth, and I want you to understand. I'll make you beg with every ounce of your broken soul, with your voice shredded and your pride shattered. Because betrayal cuts deep, but sometimes the only way to heal is through the blood and tears that follow." He tightened his grip once more, feeling the tremors in Victor's body, knowing that in this act of restraint, he was crossing the threshold from victim to executioner. No turning back now. The atmosphere thickened with raw anticipation, the weight of their shared pain hanging heavy in the air, sealing this brutal scene in a tableau of irreversible transformation. Elias's grip tightened around Victor's trembling throat, the pressure undeniable yet controlled, as if holding back a storm. His eyes, cold as shattered glass, bore into Victor's wide, panic-stricken face, the veins in his neck throbbing visibly with each strained breath. "You're going to beg me now," Elias rasped, voice low and menacing, the words deliberate and heavy with promise. "I want you to scream until your voice is torn from your throat, until every word is a jagged shard of your own guilt." He leaned in closer, the scent of burnt tobacco and sweat filling the stale air, their faces mere inches apart. Victor's eyes welled with tears, his lips trembling. But Elias wasn't done. With a brutal shove, he pressed harder, forcing Victor's jaw open slightly, the skin around his neck turning an angry red. "Show me how deep your betrayal runs," Elias whispered, voice barely audible but dripping with menace. "Let me hear your pain. Scream until your voice shatters, until the shame echoes louder than your broken promises." Victor's face contorted in agony and helplessness as Elias's fingers dug into his flesh, the skin tearing subtly beneath his nails. The once smooth lie of Victor's facade now peeled away, revealing raw vulnerability. Victor's mouth opened involuntarily, a strangled cry escaping. An agonized, fractured sound that seemed to echo through the room like a gunshot. Elias's eyes flickered with a savage satisfaction. Yet beneath that, a flicker of remorse, a silent question about the morality of what he urged from him. The blood vessels in Victor's neck pulsed wildly as he fought to breathe, lips trembling as he tried to form words. But his voice was a ragged gasp, a piercing scream muffled and torn. "Please!" Victor managed to choke out, voice hoarse and cracked, tears streaming down his face. "I beg you, please, forgive me." But Elias's expression remained cold, relentless. "No!" he hissed, voice trembling with a mixture of fury and pity. "You'll beg harder. Shout it out. Shout your guilt into the void. Let your screams be the scars that remind you of what you've done." The room seemed to close in tighter, the shadows flickering as the brutal intimacy of the moment spiraled into something both horrifying and cathartic, a visceral dance of pain and remorse that would forever mark both their souls. Victor's fractured voice was a gurgling mess, a sickening symphony of broken fragments, as blood seeped from his torn throat, pooling onto the cold concrete beneath him like dark ink bleeding into water. His eyes, wide with terror and shame, darted wildly between Elias's calculating stare and the crimson trail trailing from his mutilated voice box. An irreversible testament to Elias's wrath. Victor's lips moved desperately, forming muffled pleas that sounded more like dying whispers than words. "Please, forgive me. I'm sorry. I swear!" But the only response was Elias's cold silence, sharpened by the weight of his own bitter resolve. Elias's face was a portrait of conflicted intensity, his fists clenched tightly as if holding back a tidal wave of rage. Yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of remorse, the ghost of a man who had crossed a line from which there was no return. Without a word, he knelt beside Victor, pressing trembling fingers against the trembling man's blood-streaked throat, feeling the frantic pulse pounding beneath flesh and bone, an echo of the chaos they had unleashed. You begged for mercy," Elias whispered, voice thick with emotion that teetered on the edge of despair. "But what you really wanted was to be heard. Now all I hear is your silence, the silence you forced upon yourself. Do you see? Do you feel how your betrayal turned your voice into a scream that will never be answered?" Victor's eyes fluttered, blood dripping from his shattered vocal cords, his lips trembling as he tried unsuccessfully to speak, to make sense of the chaos he had created. Elias's gaze darkened as he gently clasped the man's trembling hands, feeling the tremor of guilt and humiliation coursing through Victor's battered body. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, the sharp sting of pain lingering in the shadows of the dimly lit room. Elias's voice cracked, trembling with the weight of his moral agony, as he finally spoke. "You begged me to forgive you, but I wonder, do you understand what forgiveness truly requires? It's not just words, Victor. It's sacrifice. It's accepting what you've done and facing the darkness you've cast into the world. And right now, all I see is a man broken, humiliated, scarred, and forever silenced by his own treachery." Tears welled in Elias's eyes, but his resolve hardened as he looked down at Victor's shattered form, knowing the cost of his vengeance was paid in blood and suffering, yet questioning whether this act of brutal justice had truly set him free, or chained him to an even darker shadow. As Victor's ragged breath slowed into faint gasps, and the blood continued to seep, Elias knew he had crossed a threshold from which there was no return, leaving him haunted by the terrible beauty of his revenge, an act that had stripped Victor of his voice and dignity, leaving only the broken husk of a man pleading for mercy amid the crimson aftermath. In the dim, oppressive silence that followed Victor's ragged, trembling breaths, Elias moved with a cold precision born of a man who had crossed a moral precipice, his hands, steady yet trembling beneath the weight of what he was about to do, grasped a jagged knife from the shadows, an extension not just of his anger but of his deep, unspoken grief. Victor's eyes widened in terror as Elias pressed the blade to his trembling neck, whispering, "This is your confession, your scar, your truth." With a calculated force, Elias dragged the blade across Victor's skin, carving a jagged line that bled crimson and darkened as it seeped into the flesh. Victor's screams choked in his throat, but Elias's voice cut through the chaos. "This is what you took from me. My trust, my friendship, my peace. Now you will wear the truth you tried to erase." Carefully, Elias retrieved a heated branding tool used in his art, an archaic instrument that hummed with a dangerous promise, and pressed it against the fresh scar, searing a symbol into Victor's flesh, a fractured cross, emblematic of betrayal and broken faith. Victor's body jerked violently, his scream piercing the thick air as the skin sizzled and smoke curled upward, mingling with the metallic scent of blood and burnt flesh. Elias watched in grim silence as the mark sealed itself, a visceral testament to their fractured past, a permanent reminder etched into Victor's very skin of the treachery that had shattered their bond. "Now," Elias whispered, voice hollow and heavy with finality, "every time you look in the mirror, you'll see what you've done, what you forced me to become." The scene felt surreal, like a nightmare painted in blood and scars. Yet Elias knew this act had become his ultimate act of catharsis, transforming betrayal into a brutal, unalterable truth. As Victor's gasping breath slowed, the crimson trickle from the new wound mingled with tears streaking Victor's battered face, his silent plea an echo of Elias's own buried pain. Elias stepped back, eyes bleeding with a mixture of sorrow and resolve, knowing that this act had forever marked them both, one sealed with flesh, the other with a soul forever scarred by the depths of his fury. As Victor lay broken amidst the shattered remnants of his pride, the silence that stretched between us felt even more deafening than the chaos that had just unfolded. His chest heaved uncontrollably, blood now pooling in the cracks of the concrete floor, pooling inside the ragged scar I had carved into his skin. His once charming smirk had dissolved into desperate, tear-streaked pleading. But I stood unmoved, my breath ragged and heavy, my mind a storm of conflicting impulses. Should I push further? The thought clawed at the edges of my consciousness like a serpent, whispering that this was only the beginning, that true justice demands total destruction. I clenched my fists, feeling the rough texture of my palms, the tremor running through my body betraying my resolve. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, the burnt tang of flesh, and the bitter taste of regret swirling together like a toxic brew. I stepped closer, my shadow casting a long dark silhouette over his trembling form, and in that moment I heard a voice inside me, whispering, almost pleading, urging me to strike the final blow, to leave him utterly broken, to erase every ounce of his hope. But then, a flicker of clarity pierced through the fog. Some hidden part of me that remembered the man I once was, the man who believed in redemption, in some distant, fragile sense. I saw his eyes, pleading, desperate, but also riddled with shame and guilt I had long buried. Is this truly justice? I thought, fighting the urge to go further, to carve him into a permanent monument of my fury. My hand hesitated, trembling, as if in that brief pause I could still choose a different path. The shadows flickered as the world around me seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my next move. The moment felt suspended in time, each second stretching infinitely, as I stared down at Victor's shattered face. Beneath all the rage and vengeance, I recognized the haunting truth, that I was teetering on the edge of becoming something unrecognizable, something I might regret forever. Still, the bloodied scars and raw wounds across Victor's body echoed the depths of betrayal that had driven me here. His lies, his manipulations, the trust I had shattered in him. Yet now, standing over him, I wondered if there was any redemption left, or if further darkness was the only true ending. My voice, hoarse and uncertain, broke the heavy silence. This is enough," I finally muttered, voice trembling, though the fire in my eyes betrayed my inner turmoil. "You wanted forgiveness. I hope you understand what you forced me to become." As I turned away, my footsteps heavy as stone, I knew I had crossed a line from which there was no return, each step echoing the internal struggle that raged within me. Whether to let go, to accept the broken man before me as the price of justice, or to venture even deeper into the abyss, fusing my pain with his in a final, irreversible act of vengeance that might forever define me. As I stood over Victor, breath ragged and trembling, the pounding of my heart echoed in the suspended silence between us. His body was a canvas of torn flesh and bleeding scars, each mark a testament to the torment I had just inflicted. Yet beneath the surface, a new revelation clawed its way into my consciousness. Something far more sinister than I had imagined. Victor's trembling lips parted in a grimace, eyes darting with a flicker of desperation. "You think this is just about you and me?" he rasped, voice strained and raw. "You have no idea what I've been part of, what I've helped hide." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, stirring a cold dread I hadn't expected. I stepped back slowly, my gaze narrowing as I saw him, trembling, trying to speak but choking on his own guilt. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, voice hoarse, trembling with a mixture of rage and curiosity. Victor's fingers clutched at the blood-stained dirt beneath him, and he looked up, eyes glassy with remorse. And something darker. "You remember that corrupt politician's scandal? The one that cost innocent lives? I was involved, deeply. It wasn't just about betrayal between us. I was part of something bigger, something that's still destroying people even now." His voice cracked, revealing layers of shame and fear I had never seen before. Every lie, every false promise. It was all connected. "You thought I betrayed you for greed, for power. But I was trying to cover up the mess I helped create. I was protecting the ones above us, the ones who pull the strings, the ones who don't give a damn about the cost." His words dripped with a bitter truth, and as he spoke, I saw the scars on his face twist in a grimace. Reminders not only of his past violence, but of the guilt he carried like a heavy chain. My mind raced, images flashing of the stories I had heard about the corruption that had devastated communities, families torn apart, lives shattered in silence, hidden behind facades of respectability. All of it, I realized, was intertwined with the betrayal I believed I had endured. Yet now, it was far more complex. I hesitated, the weight of this new knowledge pressing down on my chest. So this isn't just about revenge, I muttered, voice trembling with a mixture of anger and confusion. You've been part of something monstrous, and I've been blindly seeking justice for my own pain, while you've been aiding a system that crushes innocent people. Victor's eyes flickered with a mixture of defiance and resignation. Yeah, I helped bury the truth for years. But maybe it's time someone finally exposes it. Someone like you, Elias. Your vengeance is just a small piece of a bigger puzzle. We're all fucked in ways we don't even realize. The revelation shattered something inside me. The man before me, whom I had thought a simple traitor, was a pawn caught in a web of corruption far darker than I had imagined. The line between justice and revenge blurred, threatening to swallow me whole. As I looked down at his trembling form, I felt the raw pulse of betrayal extend beyond our personal feud, stretched across a landscape of greed, lies, and suffering. A shiver ran down my spine. For the first time, I questioned whether I was truly seeking justice or merely vengeance wrapped in a righteous guise. My fists clenched as I wrestled with the realization that I had been wielding my pain like a weapon, not only against Victor but against the entire corrupted system that had been quietly destroying lives for years. If I had known, I whispered, I might have done this differently. Victor's broken voice responded, It's too late now, Elias. But maybe this will wake you up to the truth. You're not just fighting me. You're fighting the darkness that's been infecting us all. In that moment, I understood the depths of my own darkness, the cycle I was about to perpetuate, and the fragile thread that separated vengeance from redemption. Each move, each word, now more heavy than ever, carrying the weight of truths I was only beginning to comprehend. The flickering light of a single, dim bulb cast long shadows across the cold concrete floor as I stood over Victor, whose trembling lips had finally fallen silent, his eyes wide and glazed with a mixture of shame and fear. My hands, steady yet trembling slightly from the weight of what I was about to do, reached for a rusted blade I had concealed beneath my jacket. The air hung thick with the metallic scent of blood and the scent of burnt tobacco lingering from earlier. A haunting reminder of the chaos that had led us here. Victor's voice cracked as he rasped, Please, I'm sorry, Elias. I never wanted it to come to this. But I ignored his words, driven by a storm of rage and sorrow, knowing that words would never suffice now. I pressed the cold steel against his scarred, trembling throat, feeling the roughness of the scar tissue beneath my fingertips, a testament to the violence we had both endured. Then, with deliberate precision, I etched a jagged scar into his neck, cutting deep enough to leave a permanent mark, an indelible confession of betrayal. As I worked, I whispered, This is your truth now, a reminder of what you've done, of how you made me suffer. Victor's screams echoed through the silent warehouse, raw and primal, his voice tearing across his throat as he begged, tears streaming down his face. Please, just forgive me, he choked out, voice ragged and broken. But I pressed on, forcing him into a corner of pain and remorse, until finally he was silent, trembling and defeated, his blood mingling with the sweat on his brow. I stepped back, breath heavy, the weight of what I had created settling deep within me. A visceral art piece that embodied both my fury and the possibility of redemption, a scar that told his confession in a language more truthful than words ever could be. The act was savage, brutal, yet strangely poetic, transforming his betrayal into a permanent wound that would forever mark his guilt, a symbol of the cycle of pain and forgiveness I had chosen to confront. As I gazed at my work, I realized that this scar, both physical and emotional, was my final act of defiance, a visceral testament that some wounds run too deep for words, but can be seen, felt, and remembered forever. Walking away from the scene, I felt the weight of the brutal evening settle into my bones, yet a strange sense of liberation coursed through my veins. The scar on Victor's throat, a raw crimson testament to his betrayal, glinted faintly in the dim light as I turned my back. My hands trembled, not from fear or remorse, but from the adrenaline-fueled clarity that only true catharsis can bring. I knew I had crossed a line that defied moral boundaries. But in that moment, I didn't care. The visceral act had bled out years of anger, woven into the blood and tears that had painted our confrontation. As I moved through the abandoned warehouse's echoing shadows, I reached into my satchel and retrieved the rough sketches I'd carried with me. A series of raw, haunting images that encapsulated betrayal's sting, the pain of loss, and the fragile hope of forgiveness. I sat on the cold concrete floor, the faint hum of the city bleeding through broken windows, and stared at the first piece. A distorted portrait of Victor's trembling face, his eyes pleading, mouth open in a silent scream. My fingertips brushed the edges of the paper as I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." My mind raced, fueling a new purpose, an artistic journey that could transform the chaos inside me into something tangible and powerful. Each stroke, each scar I etched into my future work would be a testament to what I'd endured. Betrayal that tore lives apart, pain that hardened or softened depending on how it was faced, and the slim, fragile thread that might someday lead to forgiveness. I knew that in channeling my trauma into art, I was forging a new path, one that acknowledged the darkness, yet refused to be consumed by it. With every piece I created, I would confront the ghosts that haunted me, turning my scars into a gallery of stories that spoke of resilience and the quiet, haunting hope that even the deepest wounds could someday be healed. As I stood once more, the cold air biting at my skin, I looked at the horizon, seeing the dawn that promised rebirth. The journey from rage to redemption would take time, but I was finally ready to face it, armed with the knowledge that sometimes the most profound forgiveness emerges from the depths of our own suffering, transformed into something painfully beautiful. The underground gallery was cloaked in shadows, the air thick with the scent of stale smoke and the faint tang of something darker. Blood, perhaps, or the residual ache of long-held secrets. I stood before my newest piece, an unsettling tableau carved from raw emotion and unflinching truth. It was a massive, jagged sculpture, etched into twisted metal and rough stone, that depicted a man, neck strained and veins bulging, desperately pleading for mercy, as his tormentor's hand pressed down upon him, a pack of cigarettes clenched tight as a grim token of betrayal. The figure's mouth was open in a silent scream, throat raw and torn, the edges jagged like broken glass. An echo of the night I forced him to beg, his voice cracking into a harsh, guttural plea that pierced the silence of my mind. I remembered how he had looked, eyes wide with shame trembling beneath my grip, his face contorted in agony as I demanded he confront his own reflection, his lies, his cowardice, the betrayal that had shattered everything we once shared. The crowd moved slowly around me, whispers of awe and discomfort rippling through the room. But I barely registered them. I had created this piece to ask a question that haunted me. Had I truly found forgiveness, or had I merely forged a deeper wound? Victor's face flashed in my mind, scarred and twisted, trembling as his own voice had wrenched out, a bitter chorus of regret that echoed through the dark corridors of my soul. Did revenge heal, or did it deepen the scars we carried? As I watched the viewers examine my work, I saw a flicker of recognition in their eyes, the silent acknowledgement that confronting darkness sometimes requires us to become it, to echo the pain so that the broken parts can finally find voice. I knew that in this piece I had not just captured a moment of brutal retribution, but had distilled years of rage, guilt, and longing into a single visceral image. It was more than art. It was a confession, a testament to the depths I'd descended to reclaim my voice. Would this act bring closure, or merely seal me further inside a labyrinth of pain? As the lights dimmed and a hush fell over the room, I took a breath, feeling the weight of my creation settle into the silence. An unspoken challenge to anyone brave enough to confront their own darkness, and a question I would carry with me long after the gallery emptied. Was revenge truly liberation, or just an intricate web that kept us tethered to our wounds, forever haunted by the ghosts we refused to let go? Elias stood motionless before the towering canvas, its jagged, visceral strokes bleeding raw emotion onto the stark white surface. The dim gallery lights cast long shadows across his face, highlighting the deep-set lines etched by nights of torment and revelation. His eyes traced the distorted figures, silent witnesses to betrayals, screams muffled beneath layers of paint. Each brushstroke a scar, each hue a fragment of his fractured soul. He reached out trembling fingers, hesitating before grazing the rough texture, feeling the ghost of his own pain embedded within the fibers. The air was thick with the scent of burnt tobacco and dried blood, memories intertwined like veins beneath his skin. "Did I finally find my voice?" he whispered, voice hoarse, cracking under the weight of what he'd endured. His gaze drifted over the distorted visage of Victor, now reduced to a shadow of guilt and shame, the scars on his face echoing the wounds he'd inflicted. An unspoken testament to the cycle of betrayal and revenge. Every step he took around the piece felt like peeling back layers of his own darkness, exposing the truth he had long buried. The once distant hope of redemption flickered faintly, fragile, trembling, yet undeniable. A tear slipped, tracing a path down his hardened cheek as he murmured, "Through pain and sacrifice, I've forged something real, something permanent, a fragile piece." The weight of his scars pressed against his mind, but within that suffocating silence, Elias understood that redemption was not about erasing wounds, but embracing them. Every one a story, a lesson, a testament to survival. As he finally turned away, his shadow stretched long across the gallery floor, merging with the darkness that had fueled his journey. He knew that while the scars would remain, each one a reminder of betrayal, pain, and the cost of reclaiming his voice, they also marked the boundaries of a victory hard won, an acceptance that sometimes true strength lies not in obliteration, but in the silent resilience to carry what's broken and forge something new out of the remnants. And in that quiet acceptance, Elias found a fleeting, trembling peace, knowing he had faced the abyss and emerged on the other side, scarred, battered, but finally free.